Yeah, thanks.
Yes, ma'am. Have a good night.
Hey Karen, nice to see you. and it's really remarkable because it's about Vienna, about 3 generations of Vienna, and about how they are just assimilated. I got a Christmas tree in their house. One converts to Christianity just because it's better for business, and they're fully assimilated. And and then what happens the next generation, and the third generation, of course, is the Nazis, and
They don't care.
and they don't care, right? They don't care that you were baptized.
No.
They don't care that that you don't even know a Seder from an Easter egg hunt.
Right.
What they know is that you have Jewish blood.
Right.
And then there's this, and I don't want to go into too much detail, but then actually it goes, and like this final scene in which it's basically, because it is semi-autobiographical, in which his family comes and tells him, it's like, you're the most Jewish one here, right? You're the one who actually has a lot of Jewish, parenting. We're the ones who are kind of keeping the family's Jewish part alive here, but we're only a quarter Jewish, right? Because we were intermarried, and
Where's this, Rabbi?
this is Leopoldstadt.
Leopoldstadt.
It's really, what was interesting about it was I didn't know what was happening. I went in cold. It was really hard to follow. But after a day, 2, 3 days of just kind of like meditating and thinking about it, I've just been overwhelmed how touched I was by this. It was a play, it wasn't a musical, and it was just wow, right? And it was a gut punch, because it's like,
This really stayed with you over.
it stayed with me. Yeah, because you remember I was talking about this weeks ago, right? It's like all of these people who just, it's not just intermarriage, just assimilation, and they just didn't see themselves. They literally were Jews just in name only. They didn't know a thing. They were indulging the grandparents for the Seder, and they were moaning about it, like, oh, we got to go to the Seder, and it's like, and
A lot of that here.
right. But when push came to shove, all it was, they came and registered you, you, everybody in this room.
Sure.
And it was kind of like, it was, and it was like a shock, because, of course, I understand this story, but it's hard for me to think of, even though I know that, so many Jews who died in the Holocaust were just about fully assimilated, and I know that, but I still can't help but not have in my mind, when I think about the people who died in Auschwitz, as people who were Jews, and were suffered sanctifying God's name, and I know that that's not the totality of it, but I can't help but just keep going to that place, and it's hard for me to think about just mass murder of people who barely saw themselves as Jews altogether. They were just Germans, Poles, Austrians, as it was in the story. It's really shocking. Anyway.
French and Dutch and everything else.
Hey, Mary. Hey, Charles. Hi, Olga. Nice to see you guys. Welcome. We're ready to start. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kachanu mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. Praise you, Adonai, our God, for commanding us to busy ourselves in the words of Torah. So, it's been a while, by the way, and I apologize, but that's what it means to have the rabbi as your teacher. Things come up like shivas and, various different things, and I just gotta, I don't
know how you keep up all together.
I don't know. It's like sometimes my brain is like, where am I? Yeah. But here we are. So I was trying to remember, and I realized, because I was reading through my Rabbi Tarfon booklet, and I said, we definitely discussed Rabbi Tarfon, because I remember discussing all of the texts of Tarfon, including discussing just how ridiculous it was that he was, putting his hands down underneath his mother's feet, pardon me, just so she could walk more comfortably. So it occurred to, but I looked, and I think we finished the discussions of the background of Rabbi Tarfon, and allow me just to remind you just briefly that you had a very entitled, rich person. It was Tarfon. He was very wealthy. And then there was that famous story about how he, Akiva comes up to him and says to him, I don't know if you remember this or not, but it's still great. And he says to him, hey, have I got a business deal for you? And he's like, you do? And I mean, it's so funny to think of Rabbi Akiva and Tarfon having that discussion. It's like, come here, I got a hot tip on a stock, right? He goes, you could buy 2 cities, right? You can buy 2 towns. And so for Tarfon's like, really, how much? And he literally buys 2 towns only to find out that Akiva took the money and gave it to the schoolhouses to help support these schools. And when Tarfon says, hey, I was kind of wondering, how's it going with my investment? And he's like, why don't you come and see? And he brings them to the schools, and Tarfon realizes that he needed to be more aware of that kind of stuff. Anyway, so Tarfon was rich, he was wealthy, he had a mother who he fully indulged by being a step stool for her to get in her bed, by putting his hands underneath her feet so they didn't get frayed or scratched by the pebbles on the ground. And yeah, Tarfon. But no question that I guess having a lot of money did also give him the benefit of being able to study a lot of Torah, because he he was famous for being great, Torah, for one of the Tanaim, one of the early rabbis, and he, has a lot of saying. He has a lot of discussions about him, a lot of stories about him, and he made it into the Pirkei Avot not once, but actually twice. So let's take a look at what he says. I don't think we read, did we do I don't think we did the first one or the second one. So this is
what you sent out?
No, so this was from the previous document. This is Avot 2:15. Do you need it?
Yeah, if you
I have a couple extra. Yeah.
I left it home.
No, it's fine. So we're still on 2. This is 2:15, and then here's 2.
Okay.
So it's the last 2 of chapter 2 that we're doing today. And hey, Mark, good to see you. We're on we're on chapter 2, number 15 is where we are right now. So, and by the way, just in case you're wondering, if you haven't seen, this is our new camera. This is called the Owl, right? The Owl, what it does is, if you talk, it like goes to you. So it's like everyone sees who's actually having, it has to change, just kind of goes straight to the person. So really if you're afraid to be in the, in the picture, then just don't say a word. See, you laughed and it came, and then you giggled and it's got you on there too. All right, so Rabbi Tarfon said, the day is short and the work is plentiful and the laborers are indolent and the reward is great and the master of the house is insistent. All right, so Pirkei Avot or value statements, there's no questions about it. Ethics statements, so we're 2:15, so it's the last page of the chapter 2 document. So on the one hand, and it's right for us to think about these as being literal ethics about how we should be leading our lives in terms of, it could be a statement, literally a statement. It's not, but it's, it's meant to have you wonder, is he talking about, a person who is a business owner and, or a worker, like is he talking to the supervisor of the workers, meanwhile, who still has the owner kind of looking over his shoulder? It's possible, but I think we know, at least in this particular case, there are other cases in which it's not so clear, but in this particular case, he's not talking about workers, he's talking about us and Torah and God. Right? So the day is short. Life is short. Right? We have a mission. We're on a mission. What's our mission? To study as much Torah and learn as much as we possibly can. And every moment that passes by that you didn't means a missed opportunity to meet with our mission, right? And then it goes on to say, and the work is plentiful, right? It's like, if you think, oh, all it is like 3 pages of stuff that you can cram on the last day, right before the test, it's not the case. This is volumes and volumes. This is just, there's so much to learn here, and it's a big task. And then the laborers are indolent. I don't know why they couldn't have just said lazy, but they chose indolent, I think, unless you can tell me that indolent and lazy are different. Like maybe there's something, although I know that the Hebrew atzelim is lazy, but do you think that the translator picked indolent because there's something about indolence that's not in lazy? I don't know. I don't know.
I think they're synonymous.
Yeah. So the laborers, us, or the student, or the potential students, lazy. They're not really interested. They're not really totally into this, or they've got better things, or they'd rather be, barbecuing with the family than studying Torah.
So he's admonishing us.
Yes, but the reward is great. Yeah, you can figure he would say that. And most importantly, the master of the house is insistent. So in other words, okay, fine, life is short, yeah, and labor and everyone gets a little lazy, but guess who is paying attention and insists that you do this? Now again, easy for a rich person to say this, right? Easy to say when all you have to do is just make sure that your mom got in and out of bed comfortably, and checking in on how your cities are doing. Short of that, all you're doing, it's like you got a lot of free time on your hands. It's like the person who says, I don't know why you're not, everyone doesn't just take classes, for, audit classes at the University of Maryland. It's amazing to do that. It's like, yeah, it'd be totally amazing to do that, except so I got a job, right? I can't just go to Maryland and take classes.
We encounter this periodically, or similar sentiment periodically. So let me ask you, if it was up to Rabbi Tarfon, everybody, regardless of economic status, would spend full time studying Torah.
Or yes, except some, but yes, but with a little but there. Sometimes I think that some of these rabbis are just out of touch. He just thinks like, well, why wouldn't you want to just, sure, why doesn't everybody have, food on their, a person cooking food for them, and why? It's kind of like, you remember the story about Gamliel when he went and visited Yoshua, and he goes, I didn't realize that you were a person who charcoal, and it's like, and Yoshua said, woe to this people that has you as its leader. That you don't even know the struggles of the people, and some of the, or even in Israel today, you have these yeshiva buchers, and all they do is they're in and out of the yeshivas all day long, and they are utterly oblivious to what's happening outside those doors, and they don't care. They have no idea about the troubles that the government's going through right now, and they don't care, because what matters is what they're doing inside here. But it does matter what's going on outside. To them, it should, but they're not paying attention because they've got someone making sure that they've got food on the table, and all they're doing is just studying Torah. And it's like, they're just oblivious. And Tarfon, I think, was too.
It's hard to believe that a leader, a rabbi in this case.
Yeah, he's famous. This guy is up there.
Yeah. I mean, I understand people get out of touch, but, and I'm sure I'm out of touch with, a lot of things, but not everybody can study Torah full time.
Right.
For your life.
Right. Not everyone can study Torah full time. He's out of touch. And I love that last line about, and the master of the house is insistent.
Yeah.
So I suppose that if he, if it was done in a more.
We had the similar one where it was should you learn worldly things or just Torah?
Right, or just Torah.
Yeah.
It's funny, and that was the discussion that's happening in Spain, you know, like, that was the Chastai ibn Shaprut of Spain who said, you know, get on, you know, get moving, and you're not wise unless you know all this stuff, not just Torah.
Yeah.
It's go ahead, Tommy, I know you want
So
to say.
if this is also metaphorical, and when I read it, I just read it just the plain meaning.
Right. This one's a metaphor. I think there are others in which it's okay to read the plain
Well,
meaning, but this one just doesn't.
you know, I could see it metaphorically. Just in the plain meaning of it, it kind of relies on Rabbi Tarfon being rich,
Yeah.
and it's just the way he sees life. But if it's metaphoric, then you'd have to see Rabbi Tarfon as being someone who is rich in Torah knowledge, maybe, for it to really make sense.
Right. Well, he is rich in Torah knowledge, but he also happens to be rich in money too. And I think the question is you know, is this a person who is, as a rich person in Torah knowledge and wanting others to get to that place of Torah richness, or is it more of that statement of, come on, everybody, you need to do this because the master has insisted?
Is the master God?
I think so.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Yeah.
I think so. Master is God,
It's God, yeah.
insisting that we do this. The master can't be anyone else than God unless it's not metaphor and it's just a statement. But then the problem is, if you read this, who is he talking? That's why I said, who's he talking to? Because he's not talking to the owner, because he's referencing the owner. He's not talking to the laborers because he's referencing the laborers too. So he has to be talking to that middleman or woman between the laborer and the owner. I mean, but it seems such a limited audience that I just feel like it can't be the metaphor. It has to be, I mean, it can't be the simple meaning, it has to be the metaphor.
Maybe he's a little bit more in touch or understanding than we give him credit for, because you know, he sees the pendulum has swung way over here. He knows it will never swing all the way to 100%, but he's saying, come on, everybody. And the way you say that, you don't say, well, come on, you should spend half your time or a quarter of your time, or you should go to a synagogue every week or anything. You just say, you better be studying, and I mean full time, I mean seriously.
Right.
But you know, maybe he doesn't really expect it.
He's calling him lazy though.
Yeah, that's.
Yeah, Tarfon's never been one of my favorites. People, not Torah scholars, people. Because the next one, by the way, on Zoom, I just want to make sure that you guys if you have a thought, feel free to chime in. But the next one about Tarfon is a little more interesting, and I really love this one. And by the way, this one is, I mean, this is a classic in Jewish tradition. And so that's why it's like, I really like Tarfon, even though I don't really like him that much. So he writes here in the second one, Rabbi Tarfon, used to say, so again, he's getting two, which is kind of unusual. He says, it's not your duty to finish the work, but neither are you at liberty to neglect it. Lo alecha hamlacha ligmor, velo ata ben chorin li batel mimena. I know it by heart, because it's a famous one, right? And then, so it's not your duty to finish the work, but neither are you at liberty to neglect it. If you have studied much Torah, you shall be given much reward. Faithful is your employer to pay you the reward of your labor, and know that the grant of reward unto the righteous is in the age to come. Okay.
He's kind of obsessed with this employer thing.
Yeah, he is. This one, however, now can be read. It's not necessarily about Torah study. There's no question that, in fact, I don't think, well, the second part is about Torah study for sure. But the first part isn't necessarily about Torah study, right? The first part, which is the famous part of it, which is, it's not your duty to finish the work, but neither are you at liberty to neglect it.
So the question is, what's the work?
What's the work? Correct. What's the work?
Isn't that the study of Torah?
Not necessarily.
Oh.
So like pursuit of justice or fairness or some larger
Maybe.
goal.
Thoughts on Zoom? It's
take care of your community.
Actually, I wondered if the first one doesn't really refer to Torah, that it does, is that you study Torah and you're never going to finish it.
Right.
So it's not your obligation to finish your studying, but you still can't neglect it.
So it could be what you're saying. I've always kind of understood this to be bringing on the moment of redemption. It's like making the world better. Like, of course, you're not going to be able to do it all, but that doesn't mean you neglect this. It's not, you can't just say, I'll let someone else do it. This is how I've always understood it. Now, again, it doesn't make me right. It just means how I've understood it. I mean, obviously, the second part, if you have studied much Torah, you'll be given much reward. That's Torah. We're not talking about that one. We're just talking about the first part, which is, it's not your duty to finish the work, but neither are you at liberty to neglect it. It's not you. No one's expecting you to be a world changer. But that doesn't mean because you're not going to be a world changer, you don't even get in there and try.
Strive to make the world better.
You strive to make the world better, and you do your part. And you don't just wait for the next person to do their part, but you do your part. And for that matter, it's like that social contract that you have with the next generation, right? Okay, no one's expecting you to pass on perfection to your kids, but that doesn't mean you don't try. Right? Or that doesn't mean you don't just reuse up the earth and just let the next generation have to clean up it's the opposite of kicking the can down the road. Right?
I think that's a great
It's a great way to put it.
interpretation, or if that's what he had in mind,
That's how I've understood it. I think so. I don't know. I mean,
Great way to-
the next part, of course, is Torah.
Yeah.
If you have studied much Torah, you shall be given much reward. Okay, that clear, I think.
Mhm.
Of course, and they'll explain that reward a little in one line later. Faithful is your employer to pay you the reward of your labor. So the employer is God. Because it's the reward is for studying Torah. I don't think it's saying that this, if you studied much Torah, you should be given much reward, as in you'll get a good post at a good synagogue that will pay you well, right? And don't worry, faithful is your employer to pay you the reward of your labor. Don't worry, that synagogue will pay you. I don't think it has to do with rabbis and their jobs. I think it has to do with the reward, the personal reward of study. And we, by the way, and Torah study is one more thought, especially now, when you say Torah study, that could be anything, right? People would say, when we studied the history of Spain, it was Torah study, even though we didn't mention a word of Torah, because in Jewish tradition, it's like the Jewish kind of study is all Torah study. Certainly studying the Talmud is Torah study. Studying this is Torah study, even though we know that this isn't the actual Torah.
So who is his audience?
Who's his audience here? Well,
Is it
no,
rabbis or general people?
general people.
Okay.
General people.
So I have a question. So in the last line of the award, and know that the granted reward unto the righteous is in the age to come.
Right.
I always thought of Judaism as
The here and now.
this life. I think of Christianity is, confess to God now because
Mm-hmm.
He'll, forgive you in the next life.
Right.
And I think of Judaism as in the here and now. So what does he mean by in the age to come?
Well,
I mean, I would think, do this and the reward is right now for you. You'll feel good. You will make a contribution. You'll feel good about yourself and all that.
right. Let me not talk about that
Okay.
yet,
Okay.
but we'll definitely talk about it.
Okay.
So let's just take a step back. You studied much, you'll be given great reward. So that is, that might be kind of this hope or this thought, but I'm sure that for many people, they questioned that. Like, all right, I'm studying a ton, where's Where's my reward? My son just died. My wife is, whatever it is. And where's the reward that I was promised? So, and they answer that question, or he does in the next part by saying, faithful is your employer to pay you the reward of your labor. So I guess what it's trying to say is there is justice in this world, right? There is that you study Torah or you do good. There is a reward for that. Sometimes it's hard, maybe hard to see it. Maybe it's not coming at the exact moment that you think it's going to come, but there is a reward for doing good. And hopefully, I think the converse is, and trust me, those people who are evil, there's not just no reward, but there's punishment in some way. And then, so it starts by saying, you do this, you're going to get reward. The next part is saying, and trust me, the employer does know how to measure reward and and no reward. And then finally, it then says, it's like a three-pronged attack. And then finally it says, and okay, I know that you might say, yeah, my grandfather studied Torah, or my father studied Torah day and night, and he never saw a lick of reward, and he died. And so I can tell you, I don't exactly know what you're talking about here. And then what he says is, it may not necessarily come in this world, but it will come in the world to come. Now, now let's talk about. So the world to come is definitely the closest thing that we have in Judaism to heaven, or the Christian version of heaven. So the world to come is indeed a very real and prevalent theme throughout our Jewish texts. We don't really talk about it much outside the realm of study, because especially in a Reform synagogue, because, if I were to say to you, oh, yeah, I know, trust me, you want to keep kosher for Passover, trust me, eat that matzah, you'll benefit in the world to come. You'd look at me like I was insane. And so we don't really talk about it because it's awkward. It's kind of, because Reform Judaism especially is based upon reason and intellect, and not based upon faith, right? And so, but however, still, we can't deny that it's.
So the world to come is when Messiah comes and everybody is resurrected?
No,
No.
the world to come is literally when you die, there is a next world. Now, okay, so.
I have to change everything I've been doing.
Right, yes, you do. Because you all along have been functioning with utter impunity. So let's start this way. We certainly don't have this whole thing about harps and clouds and a gate and St. Peter's hanging out by the gate. Similarly, we don't have a fiery furnace, with people chained down, balls and chains and pickaxes. That said, we have a little reference to kind of, and I put in quotes, hell. The two of you know it, because in Torah study, we were just talking about Sheol, right? I would go down to Sheol, mourning for my son. That's what Jacob says about Joseph. Now, but it's not much. So I don't want to but we happen to read it. Doesn't happen very often in our literature that we talk about, quote, hell, but we do have a word for it. It's Sheol, the opposite of Olam Haba. That said, we also don't have a very defined view of what Olam Haba is. The best description I've kind of ever seen and gotten in my mind based upon the various texts that I've read is, it's like this big study hall with all the great rabbis hanging around, and you know, and the question is, how good of a seat do you have? You know, when you're when you know when
That's
you're
your dream.
no, that's kind of like really what the
For some people, that could be Sheol.
right. No, fair enough. Touche, I agree with you. What I'm saying is like, but that's how the rabbis, and it's always you don't see Olam Haba, the next world, in much of our literature that comes after like the Talmud and the Midrash. So it's not like Maimonides does not talk about it. He talks about, he does say, in a famous line, he does say, you know, all of Israel, yesh lahem chelek le'olam haba. They all have a piece of the world to come. But he doesn't really go into discussing like what that, you know, he references it and talks about how we all have a piece of the world to come. But he's a rationalist. He doesn't go into the details of, you know, of what next world is going to
In the
be like.
spectrum, from Orthodox all the way through Reform, do we live our lives
For now,
for
even
this life?
even the Orthodox.
For this life?
Yes. That said,
Yeah.
think about Yom Kippur. You know, what is it? What is, may you be inscribed for a blessing in the book of life? Like the book of life is, you know, is another way of saying what happens. And you know, and in Yom Kippur, B'shiva Shamale, B'shiva Shamata, in the yeshiva on high, and the yeshiva on low, you know, down below. We're the ones in the yeshivas down below, and there's another yeshiva on high, which are the people who died. So I guess what I'm saying is, in no way should anyone feel like, oh, afterlife off, you know, we Jews, no, we don't talk about it, we don't do it, it's not us. No, we do, but it's not part of our world. That said, think about like how helpful it was so often for so many people in the Holocaust. 75 years, 80 years ago, you know, you're talking about people who, for no reason, save they were Jews, were murdered, right? And how was it explained to them? It was explained, which is that, look, I know you're suffering right now, and I know this is terrible, but you won't be suffering in the next. Like it was a comfort and a help to people who were going through tremendous suffering.
I think that's why the Christians do it too. That not that they believe that, but I think it's a comfort. It's something to hang on to.
Yeah, and it's also an invisible police force.
Yeah.
Right. If you think that,
Right.
you know, that every act you do is being kind of thrown on scales, then you're going to make sure to.
It's a theory.
Yeah, I mean, so yes, we have it, and this is, and it's not something, for anyone who studies and reads texts, no one bats an eye when they see it. Like I see it so much, it doesn't even like, you know, it didn't even occur to me to stop and talk about it because I've just seen it so many times.
Concept, but we don't dwell on.
We don't dwell on it at all.
Defining it.
Especially in Reform, but even in Orthodox, you don't hear, like I've got Orthodox family in my family. I don't hear them talking about, you know, the next world, and it's here. Their theology is here. You know, and maybe maybe they might explain why it is that they feel. They might explain that the reason why they do the mitzvot is because, you know, God's, you know, going to be is watching and observing and for the next world. But that doesn't. But if someone said to them, "Turns out we found the reality and we're going to debunk that theory," they're still doing the mitzvot. So they're not really doing it, but that might be the answer that they give as to why. But they're not really doing it for that reason.
Can't you read it also like it's not the world to come, but it's tomorrow? Like if you take these two things together and, you know, building on what you said, it's kind of like that saying, if you try your best, you have your reward.
Look, I agree and love that. that. It's what you're saying is doing good, doing the right thing, studying Torah even. There is even if you don't like hit, somehow find the right numbers for the lottery, there is a value and a reward to that. It's quote rewarding, but it's also that you become a better person, you become a more learned person, you become a more well-rounded person, and all those things are rewarding and rewards themselves. So yes, and all those things are, as you point out, for the next day, right? You do this now, and the next day you're a better person as a result of it.
Or in the context of the Holocaust, like the Viktor Frankl idea of just, you're doing what you can in that day to help somebody in some little way. You're starving, but you're giving your bread away.
Right.
And you make it through the day and you feel better the next day.
Yep. And you know that you did good, and and there's actually science to back this up too. They talk about when you give tzedakah, it feels good. When you help another person or institution,
Feels great.
it feels great.
It's called paying it forward.
Yeah, but it sets off various different
It's
chemicals in your body that make you feel good. Just today, I'm certainly not going to tell you it is. The person in our temple, not a member, a person who works here, is going through a really, really, really hard time. And, and I helped her out considerably. I've a discretionary fund, you probably know about it, and it's one of the primary purposes to use it is to help people. But like seeing like her just be feeling like almost like relieved from a huge burden that she was carrying, it was amazing, right? And so there is truth to the fact that just doing the right thing and being better and giving tzedakah or studying Torah, like you walk out there, you feel like you're a little refreshed. You did it, so yes, you can see it that way too, for sure.
You mentioned earlier about passing from one generation to the next might be the tomorrow or the future. I got to tell you, I get disappointed with myself a lot that I didn't, pass on enough Judaism. But when something happens that tells me, it makes me feel good. Hey.
Oh, you mean like when you see like Amanda, she's doing Shabbat or something at the house, you're just like, love it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
You love it. And you know that you did
Right.
good. Totally. So Tarfon is an interesting character. I think I really love this expression by Tarfon. I've always felt a little lukewarm about him as a human being, but I certainly love, and this one especially. This is like a famous. But again, that first line especially, the lo alecha hamlacha ligmor, the lo ata ben chorin li vatel mimena. It is not, your responsibility to complete the work, but neither are you at liberty to just not even give it a whirl at all. And that, by the way, is. It's so much, it's synagogue life, it's all volunteer life. It's like the person who volunteer, who does stuff with the symphony or the opera or the film festival. It's like, no one's asking you to put this, no one's asking you to run the synagogue yourself, but does that mean that you can just sit and ignore it? No one's asking you to pay the mortgage, to donate every dollar you have just to make sure that the synagogue is functioning. Yeah, but does that mean you should just say, but since I can't pay down the mortgage entirely, that means I shouldn't, make a contribution? Like, it's like no one's asking you to be the whole, no one's asking, here, the best example of all, no one's asking you to solve climate change, but does that mean you should, because there's no way that you shouldn't recycle? Of course you should, right? It's like, neither are you at liberty to just say it's not on me, and I'll let everyone else do the recycling and I'll just do it my own way. It's like, and that's totally what's going on here. Anyway, chapter 2. Yeah, go ahead.
One more thing.
Yeah.
Do we have any idea why this is all one Pirkei?
And Eric, why?
I mean, like, if you have studied much, Torah, you shall be given much reward.
Right, I can
doesn't-
see why, I
How
can
does
see,
that follow what's before there?
Right,
I mean,
it doesn't.
Sort of does, but.
right,
not
all
really.
of the lines from, if you have studied much Torah to the end, for sure works together. But how does that part you work from, it's not your duty to finish the work, unless it's having to do with Torah study, right? Which was the first thought about it. I came up with what I kind of always thought it was, but part of the reason why I thought it was about like redemption and recycling and whatever, and that's just because that's how because I've only, whenever I think about this, I only think about it from that one line. Like I know that one line by heart. You're always mentioned that, hey, it's not your duty to finish the work, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't be a part of helping, right? And so no one ever, and then quotes the remainder of that. And so, I always, and so maybe all along I've learned it slightly out of context, and that I've learned that it was really only and always about Torah study. And if so, then it fits fine.
Like, maybe you're not gonna figure everything out about the Torah.
Right,
but
no, it's right. It's not yours to learn every inch and every person's saying and no one's asking you to be like Rabbi Eliezer and being that plastered cistern that everything goes in and nothing comes out.
Poke a pin through the Torah and know.
And know what word is on the other side, right, that, you've heard that, right? It's like, no one's asking that. It's like, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't give it a try. It's true too. No, it's this, what we're doing right here. Like, no one expects you to know the Talmud. But what you're doing is, hey, but let's learn a little, right?
95% is showing up.
That's Woody Allen, right? No, but you're right. No, but no one's expecting you to learn the Talmud, but but think about it. I mean, really, think about this very class, this very thing we do. Like, how many people would you say, I'm surprised that others wouldn't want to just, it's not like we're going deep Talmud study and you're poring over the text here. We're just learning some stories. We're learning about the people, and we're just kind of engaging it a little bit, right? And how many people could, are thinking, it didn't even occur to them to just kind of a little dab and a little taste, because they thought, there's no way I'm ever going to be able to be studying Talmud. So what point is it for me to even do this? Right? And it's like, doesn't mean you're at liberty to ignore it. It just means that, no one is asking you to be a scholar.
On one level, there may not be a division between that first couple of clauses
Right.
and the rest of it if
If it's about Torah study.
If it's about Torah study,
Then it fits
but
perfectly.
that also leads to being a better person.
Yes, that too. But right, I just think that what it's like. First of all, if you're saying does it make sense if it's about being a better person and bringing on the world of redemption and the days of redemption, or just realizing your place to make the world a better, that your obligation to make the world a better place and that kind of stuff.
There's not really a division between the two.
Right. You can certainly see the end, which is, hey, and the reward comes, you may not necessarily see the reward now, but it will come in the world to come. So maybe what it is X leads to, X will lead to a reward, maybe in this world, maybe in the world to come, just like Torah study will lead to rewards, maybe in this world, maybe in the world to come. So it could work together. I think, though, that it's more like maybe all along it was intended to be about Torah study, but I have misunderstood it all these years.
Well, it works wonderfully.
It worked great both. It works great both.
Vote to get us to think.
Yeah.
And maybe
Yeah.
he intended that, and he might be sitting here saying, geez, I didn't think of that, but I like the way you're interpreting it.
Yeah, well, but the reality is that these guys were so limited that all they thought about was Torah study, never thought about bringing on the Age of Redemption. Let's look at, so now let's look at this thing, which is Pirkei Avot 3:1-2. So I sent this in the classroom today. So we're going to learn about we got 15 minutes, so we're gonna learn about, I guess we're just gonna do one, we'll do one. We're gonna learn about Akavia ben Mahalel. So here's a guy who we don't have much. He's one of the earlier, sages, kind of like around the same time as Hillel. So is, by the way, the next guy, but we're not doing the next guy yet. We're just doing this one. So around the time of Hillel, and he is, so he's not even, quote, rabbi yet, because we're not even in the, we're not.
That's like earlier than.
That's the next generation. We're
about-
2 generations away, and he's still. So he's living at the time of the prior to the destruction, but right at the time. So he's living in 30 CE or 40 CE. So it's not like he's ancient. He's not like back to the men of the Great Assembly. He's like 2 generations. The time Hillel, so 2 generations before Yochanan.
It's a pretty tumultuous time.
Very tumultuous time. That is exactly correct. So here are 2 Mishnahs about him. So just like your Kevoda's Mishnah, here are just 2 Mishnahs from a different volume about him. So Akavia ben Mahalalel testified concerning 4 things. They said to him, Akavia, retract these 4 things which you say, and we will make you head of the court in Israel. Av Beit Din. That's the term. It's it's one of the 3 positions of power in the Sanhedrin. So all you have to do is retract these 4 things that you said, and we'll make you, Av Beit Din. It's like saying, a presidential candidate saying, if you just apologize for your stance on this and that, I will not, invite you to be on my ticket as the vice president. But you just gotta separate yourself from these positions that you've held in the past. And in this particular case, though, he just, they said what they were, but it was just so like, who cares? It was all who cares. But the point was, he was arguing he wasn't in agreement with everybody. He was saying, no, you do have to wash your hands between this and that. And they're like, you don't have to wash your hands. And, and another one was, you get the point. Really ridiculously irrelevant things, but not to them. So they said to him, Akavia, retract these 4 things which you say, and we will make you the head of the court in Israel. He said to them, it's better for me to be called a fool all my days than that I should become, even for 1 hour, a wicked man before God. So they shouldn't say he withdrew his opinions for the sake of power. So what do we get from this first Mishnah is that about him is that, okay, he's like this principled guy. I mean, maybe overly principled, for the sake of just everyone just kind of getting along. He could have just been, just chilled, but he didn't. And he was principled as a result of it. And what else do we learn about him? So then the next Mishnah, so that's 5, 6, and that's the first, and then the next one says, and it's not like there's tons of writing between this. What I left out was, the specifics about what it was that he argued with. At the time of his death, he said to his son, retract the 4 opinions which I used to declare. He said to him, why did you not retract them? He said to him, his son, I heard them from the mouth of the many, and they heard the contrary from the mouth of the many. So in other words, what Akavia is saying says to his son, go tell these other rabbis that he's about to die. And what he's trying to do is, like, before he dies, let's just smooth this whole thing out. Right? And he says, and then the son says to him, why didn't you do this, 20 years ago? So you could have been Av Beit Din, but moreover, we wouldn't have to walk when we saw these people walking down the street, we wouldn't have to walk in the opposite direction, so we didn't have to confront them. Anyway, he said, well, I heard them from the mouth of the many. In other words, Akavia was saying, like, I wasn't making this up. Like, I heard them from all these people who agreed with me. But they also heard it from many. So, right? So he's recognizing that both of us heard it from many people. I stood fast by the tradition which I heard, and they stood fast by the tradition which they heard. But you have heard my tradition from the mouth of a single individual, and their tradition from the mouth of the many. So in other words, but you, my son, only have heard it from me. Everybody else says the opposite now. So now it's 20-1. Used to be 10-10, but now it's 20-1, right? And he says, it is better to leave the opinion of the single individual and to hold by the opinion of the many. Right? This is the wisdom, the father's final words to his son before he dies. He said to him, Father, commend me to your colleagues. Right? So he's saying, Dad, do you think you could do this instead of me? Because, you could also put in a good word for me, because I've been kind of living here as this, I've been studying Torah with you, but I've been kind of not been able to kind of go out in this world because of you. It would kind of be helpful if you could, maybe go in and say, I was wrong, I'm sorry, and my son's a good guy. Commend me to your colleagues. He said to him, so Akavia said to his son, I will not commend you. He said to him, have you found in me any wrong? The son said to the father, found in me any wrong? He said, no. Your own deeds will cause you to be near, and your own deeds will cause you to be far. Right? So the father, Akavia, this is the father is like, no, I want you to be part of that group, but I want you to be part of that group not because they're getting, the first class recommendation from me, but rather they're getting, they see you doing it on your own merits. Like it's a very touching story, painful in some ways, touching in other ways. At least what we can say is that we have a very, very principled individual here, right? He's not going to step down from his opinions, and he is certainly not going to have his son gain position in, the Sanhedrin based purely on who the father was, but rather, he wants his son to gain position in the Sanhedrin based on his own merits. Akavia seems like a good guy. Let's take a look at what he had to say. So this is Pirkei Avot, Pirkei Avot, chapter 3, number 1. And just a word about chapter 3 before we continue. So, we had the first chapter was literally just the line of Gamliel, well, starting back with the earliest men of the Great Assembly and, Antigonus of Soho and all these guys, but then it goes on and gives the line of Gamliel, who was the leader of the Sanhedrin. Then chapter 2 continues with the line of Gamliel, but then it goes into Yochanan ben Zakkai and his students, and ends with Tarfon, who was kind of a contemporary of Yochanan ben Zakkai's students as well. So now we're kind of starting back a little bit earlier, but this one doesn't have quite the same type of order to it. We are going back a little bit earlier, but that's, I think, somewhat coincidental. But the point is that it doesn't have necessarily the same intentional kind of ordering that it had in the previous two. So Avot 3:1, it starts off, Akavia ben Mahalel said, mark well 3 things and you will not come into the power of sin. know from where you come and where you are going, and before whom you are destined to give an account and reckoning. That's next world kind of stuff, that last part, by the way. Now, from where do you come? From a putrid drop. Where are you going? To a place of dust, of worm, and of maggot. Before whom you are destined to give an account and reckoning? Before the King of Kings, the Holy One, blessed be He. Okay. So, three things keeps you from falling into the clutches of sin, right? And if you can remember these, then you're going to stay away from sin. Interestingly, they really are all very similar, but a little interesting. So the first one is know from where you come. And what is that? From a putrid drop. Any ideas as to what that means?
From nothing.
Nothing? A literal needle point full of semen. Like you're all just, at your origins, you're just like a little bit of fluid. Right? That's it. And where do you go? Where are you going?
Into dust.
Dust, decay, maggots. Your bodies are just going to decompose.
Back to the earth.
So we all started from nothing. We're all going to decompose into maggots and decay.
But nonetheless.
And the third thing, but yet we all have to have that moment of reckoning before God, right? It's basically saying, at least talk about, I think this is an amazing one. And I don't think this is like getting all this, there's nothing about Torah study here, right? This is just real good advice, right? It's like, it's the same adage as he puts his pants on one leg at a time, just like everybody else does, right? It's the same.
It's telling you to be humble.
Be humble. You all come from nothing, and trust me, you're going nothing. You can't, you can't take it with you, right? All this stuff you worked so hard for, guess what happens? It's just staying. It's not like you keep it.
But you also matter in that you're important enough to have to give the reckoning.
Yes. And during that time between putrid drop and decay, it's like what you do matters. Yeah. So instead of thinking like, oh, I'm just going to go walk around like I'm all hot shit, instead, why don't you use this short term, the time that you have on earth wisely, right? I think that's what's saying here. It's really like, I mean, if you were to give advice to your kid / grandkid, I mean, would you not kind of say, it's like, you know what? Everyone has strengths, everyone has talents. We all, it's like, look, it's how you interact with each other, which really matters. Don't think that you're all that much better just because you have X and Y. We're all just human beings here. We're all, treat everyone, with that type of respect. They're humans, you're humans. You were just, you wouldn't say you were just a little piece of sperm just like them. And you wouldn't say, but you might say, look, you're doing all this stuff. You're acting in a way which is just, I really struggle with. You're greedy. What's your plan? Is your plan because you think that this, like all goes with you? It's like,
yeah, I know how my kids would respond if
good.
At least especially the older one, which would be something like, Dad, if I'm going to a place of dust, worm, and maggot anyway.
Right, might as well eat, drink, and be merry right now.
What difference is a day of reckoning?
Well, yeah, except that it's a great point, and that is a great point, which is that you might have your day of reckoning, but we're all going to that same end place, unless you're thinking about it, unless, as they did, it's like, but your soul is kind of still
Keep
alive.
reading, there's more, you know.
Right, your soul is still of value, you know, alive here, and look, it's I really do think, even if you, so fine, even if we take away that part about we have the reckoning before God, I really do think that there is that kind of wisdom about that. It's basically just like, live your life with humility here. Recognize where you came from and where you're going, and that just this kind of intermediary point between that beginning and that end, is we're just transient visitors, and let's, be humble.
But the reckoning part is important, or else you would think, like you were saying, nothing matters.
Right.
Like,
Right, so it could be, do you have a painful moment, path towards decay?
Or it's different than what we were talking about a minute ago. I mean, personally, I don't live for, try to do the right thing for the day of reckoning. I try to do the right thing because it's the right thing to do, and because I feel better when I know I did the right thing.
It's a different kind of reckoning.
Right.
But it's a reckoning.
Because we don't believe literally in this, but there is something metaphorically that we do believe in, right? We do believe in the concept of being humble, and we also do believe that we are going to have the day of reckoning may not come before King of Kings, Holy One, blessed be He, but the day of reckoning is going to, if you are the type of person that we want each other to be, then the day of reckoning is going to come for yourself.
Yeah.
Right? You know what? I got to look myself in the mirror tomorrow, and do I like the person that I see there? And that's the day of reckoning.
And maybe that as long as somebody who still remembers you is still alive, even after you're gone, they remember how you were.
Yeah, great point. Yeah, great point.
It also goes back to the chapter 2, to what you were saying before about doing the work, even if you're not finished.
Right, even if you're not gonna finish it. You still gotta look your face,
good work.
and you gotta face the mirror. Are you okay with what you did or not?
Exactly.
Mary, Charles, Olga, nice to see you guys. Actually, Charles, man, you got dark. Oh, that's a little better. Now it's lighter. And now you got like lipstick. No.
Thank you, Rabbi.
See you later, Tom.
Thank you.
Nice to see you, bud.
Did you do okay? What did your father have?
Thank you. Good night.
He was proud, we talked about it, and he just liked